Jared, it's great to have you on the show. First time on the Christian Rock 20. Of course, excited to talk about your band Poetic Descent and kind of how you guys got to where you're at now. But first, of course, welcome to the show, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people who don't know yet, and you guys are a fairly new band called Poetic Descent that has more or less risen from the ashes of what was a band called Mayfly. And we played a couple of songs from Mayfly on the show. A lot of us were sad to see Mayfly go, but I'm excited to see that you guys were still at it, at least some of you guys, in this new project. How did the transition happen, and maybe even just a brief synopsis of what happened with Mayfly to end up pushing you guys into where you're at now?
We just kind of decided to disband back in around February of 2017.
Okay.
There was a lot of pressure. We were trying to prepare to record a full length because we had done an EP and a single previously, and there was just there was a bit of internal conflict in the band, and we just decided it would be best for our relationships to part ways. But we already had studio time booked, which we'd canceled once a few months previously, so I didn't want to cancel it again. I had all these songs that were written to be on the next Mayfly record, so I decided I was still going to go in and record them on my own.
Okay.
And thankfully, Adam, the drummer from Mayfly, was on board to play those with me because that's the one thing I couldn't do. Poetic Descent came from that. We kind of sat on the music for a year. Adam, his first child, daughter was born, so he was busy with that. And I was just kind of doing some behind-the-scenes stuff, getting it ready to be released, and kind of doing some research just to figure out how to get it out to a bigger audience without having a record label like we had with Mayfly.
Right.
And then, Joel, our former guitar player who started Mayfly, I started showing him the music, and he's always been very music business-minded, so he's helped me a lot in preparing and submitting songs to radio and stuff. So just a couple months ago, we finally released the first of 6 songs.
Sweet.
And we've got 5 out so far, and we'll have the 6th one released in a couple more weeks.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this because I've had this conversation with some other people, but what led you guys to try to go the route of doing singles as opposed to just saying, here's a new EP, have at it?
I know a lot of people don't really listen to albums all the way through anymore.
Right.
And there's so many bands vying for your attention online that I figured maybe each song would get more attention if we spaced out when each one was released instead of putting it out all at once.
Sure. I know that Mayfly had reached a certain level of success, and a lot of people within the industry knew who Mayfly was, but it never felt like, at least in the time that I've been doing this show, that Mayfly got a ton of attention from the radio side of things. But yet, in the short amount of time since you've started Poetic Descent, you guys have already had a single that is doing quite well fairly quickly. What is your reaction to that?
I feel like, at least I personally put a lot more work into submitting music to radio. I'm still surprised. We've never been on, Mayfly was never on Billboard. We never really knew how to get on Billboard, but we kind of did our research, and we're on we broke the top 10 of Christian rock radio charts, and I'm still just amazed because some of the bands that are on there I was listening to in high school and I looked up to. It's just surreal to be on a chart with like Demon Hunter and Spoken Wolves at the Gate.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. And it's funny because I don't know if you seem like you notice this as much as I do, because I, of course, doing a show that is a countdown show, I do end up seeing every Billboard chart for especially this genre every week. And, I kind of get to watch what trends, and it feels like that the chart is mostly made up of bands now that have been either around longer than 5 years and less than a year and a half. And okay. I don't know what that is. I mean, obviously there's exceptions. That's not a hard and fast rule. It's just kind of more of a trend to me. But it feels like there's a lot of new bands who are like, taking up the torch and trying to still do rock from a Christian point of view. And then there's the mainstays like your Spokens and Demon Hunters and Skillets and Disciple that have been around for a long time that are still doing really good stuff. But it feels like there's this weird waning population of bands that have been around for, say, like 3 to 6 years. Like there aren't that many of them, it feels like, that stuck around. And I don't know don't know that there's anything more to that. I don't think there's a question built into that, but I definitely think that it's kind of interesting. But what makes you want to make the music of this style that you are? Because a lot of bands feel like they're either shifting either way heavy or a lot poppier. It doesn't feel like there's not a lot that's kind of in kind of a middle ground when it comes to rock.
I don't know. I've always loved the super heavy stuff, but I always like a good chorus too that's catchy and easy to sing along with.
Right.
Some of my favorite bands were like Staple and Chasing Victory, who vocally would switch back and forth between the clean singing and screaming quite frequently, and I always thought that was pretty cool, so I tried to learn how to do that. I don't know if you really heard any of our other songs yet besides Close Encounter. We definitely some of the newest ones we released are definitely on the heavier side.
Okay.
Close Encounter was about the closest we got to being radio friendly, I guess.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a fun lead into my next question. Of course, since we're playing Close Encounter already, we usually play more than one song by the band that's being interviewed. So what song would you like us to play from Poetic Descent in addition to Close Encounter?
Oh, I guess to hear the more aggressive side, maybe Martyrs.
Yeah, Martyrs would be good. Tell us about that track and kind of what we can expect from it.
Okay, so Martyrs, the lyrical concept for it, I started writing probably when I was like 13 years old, and I'm 28 now, so it's probably the oldest song in the batch of Poetic Descent songs. And it basically came from me reading a book called Jesus Freaks, which the band DC Talk put out along with an organization called Voice of the Martyrs, which they do a lot of service to persecuted Christians around the world. And it's just a lot of stories and accounts of people who were in prison, tortured, and murdered for the name of Jesus. And that's just something that has made me continue to be strong in my faith and believe that's Jesus who I need to be following, just because it's amazing how these people would love the people that were persecuting them. They'd pray for them and ask God to forgive them. And in the midst of that, there's just something that's supernatural, that kind of ability that doesn't come natural to us, to want to forgive the people who are hurting us. I just wanted to write a song, kind of a tribute to those people, those Christians who've gone before us. And that's how Martyrs came about. The final touch on that song was a friend of mine I met a couple of years ago at a music festival in Kokomo, Indiana called Pit Fest. She's a spoken word poet named Egypt Speaks, and I asked her to write a poem for the middle section of the song, and it really just put the icing on the cake for that song.
You had mentioned kind of your affinity for heavy music, but also for music that had kind of a singable chorus, kind of the clean vocal, harsh vocal kind of combo that I think one of the most appealing things in heavy music for me. I mean, I'm all about a song that has screams all the way through it, and I can totally appreciate a song that has very clean vocals throughout the whole thing. That's great. But when you make that combo, it really does it for me. I imagine a lot like it does for you. But is there one band that, while this is not necessarily the thing that is done as much anymore as maybe it was in like the early 2000s, is there one band that stands out to you that you're just like, this is kind of a big inspiration for where I want this to go and how I want this to sound?
I'd say like the couple I mentioned earlier, Staple and Chasing Victory.
Okay.
Is definitely a sound I aspired to. We had the vocalist Darren Kime from Staple actually do guest vocals on a Mayfly song a few years ago.
Oh, nice.
So that was really cool.
If I remember correctly, I think I saw Staple open up maybe for Disciple back in the day before I knew who Staple was. And it was like right after their first record came out. I'm like, okay, well, the name sounds cool. The album cover looks cool. Let's see how this goes. And it was, of course, back before you could hear a ton of stuff online we showed up and after we left, we were like, I had a poster, I had a shirt, I had the CD. So I'm right there with you, man. They're one of those bands that I definitely miss being part of the musical landscape.
Yeah, they toured with Disciple quite a bit, and their bass player ended up playing with Disciple for a few years.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Israel.
That's funny. Well, cool. I mean, I feel like I haven't really gotten to this yet, which is definitely a huge reason for us to be talking in the first place. But let's talk about the song Close Encounter. I mean, it's the single. It's doing well. What's the story behind that one?
Okay, so this song started probably with the music. I was watching the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Okay.
And there's a scene where the scientists are playing notes on a keyboard, and they're right in front of the UFO. And then the UFO is playing those sounds back, imitating the scale. And I grabbed my guitar and figured out all the notes on the scale, and then started basically how the guitar part at the very beginning came from that, except I changed the key later on so I could sing it higher. But
there you go.
That's where that came from. And then lyrically, at the time, I was watching the show X-Files, and I'd never seen it before in my life until a couple years ago, and I went straight through the series, all 9 seasons.
Right,
yeah. I really want to write a song based on that. And the two kind of repeated quotes, phrases in that show are, I want to believe, Mulder says that a lot, and then on the poster on his office wall, it has a picture of a UFO, and it says the truth is out there. So I started writing a chorus based on those words, and then it kind of turned into this thing of, it basically just turned into an idea of searching for God in the universe, seeing his fingerprint, and kind of likening him to an extraterrestrial. That's kind of the concept for Close Encounter.
Nice. I think that's awesome. Now, this is a totally tangential question, but it kind of the idea of you saying, like paralleling God to a UFO. Have you ever watched the show Ancient Aliens?
I don't believe I have.
If you're ever up really late and you have nothing to do and you're in for kind of a good giggle, it's pretty great. If only because they'll show you like some sort of like weird, like unexplainable mystery to them, and they'll be like, and this happened and then this happened, and there can only be one explanation, and it's UFOs. And it's just really funny because it's weird. They go down this weird logic trail that you usually get about 3/4 of the way and you kind of feel like you're kind of with them. And then at the very end, they say something so ridiculous that you're just going, okay, I'm out. And it's funny because it's usually not necessarily and it's UFOs. It's usually like there's something else that kind of ties them together. Everything that's the clincher for them as to why it absolutely has to be UFOs is usually such a reach that it's just laughable. But anyway, if you're ever really bored, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Maybe I can find it online. I actually don't have cable at home, so. Oh
yeah, I want to bet that it's either. I know it's either on Netflix or Hulu because that's where we watched it. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, Ancient Aliens. Not endorsing it as a factual show, but it is good for a giggle. Cool. You guys are recording songs right now that you had originally written for Mayfly. How would you rate the experience of getting this music done and out there in comparison with doing the same thing for Mayfly? How is it different for you in this point in your career and in this different band setting, even though it's kind of some of the same players?
I guess it's different. I had to do a lot more work on my own with releasing it, and I made some videos to promote it and stuff. We haven't played a single show yet, which is kind of weird. With Mayfly, we'd already been playing for a couple of years before we really released any recordings. Yeah, a lot of communication with anybody else who's involved has been online, hasn't been very much face-to-face. So yeah, it's a very different stage where we've kind of we've grown up and have more responsibilities now, so it's just harder to get together, and we work on it when we can.
Okay. With that being the case, what do you see the future of Poetic Descent being at this point? I mean, obviously it's just the very beginning stages, but yet, as we talked about before, you've already got a single that's made top 10 on Christian rock radio charts for Billboard, and that's a pretty big deal. And one, I got the impression you didn't really expect that, but two, where do you see it going from here? I would feel conflicted if I were you on a certain level, but I don't know how you're feeling about that.
I'm really hoping that Billboard chart thing hopefully will stay up there for a while, and certain people will start to notice and be asking us to play some shows at their venues and stuff. I'm not really trying too hard to seek out shows. It's just expensive to drive really far away and not get paid anything, so I'm kind of looking for paying shows at this point only. Mayfly, we played a lot of free shows several hours away, and while I love doing it because the live performance is my favorite side of it, it just got expensive, so I'm taking a step back with that. But yeah, I would love to maybe play a hometown show. We've got a music store here in my town of Troy, Ohio, and hopefully maybe our first show will be there this summer, and maybe get a couple of festivals before the end of the year. Yeah, I don't expect to do a whole lot with that side of things this year. Maybe it'll pick up more next year once more people know who we are. And then probably in the winter, I'm going to focus on maybe just one single this time. I've had a lot of time to sit and listen to those songs over and over again. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to do differently, or I think I could do better with new material. So just invest more time and money maybe into one single and maybe get a music video out. That's kind of what the future plans I have are.
Okay, cool. Now, with the idea of you doing a live show/shows, I mean, as of now, the only two official members of the band are you and Adam, who plays drums.
Yeah.
What would a live show look like as of now?
I'm hoping to get a couple friends involved on guitar and bass to fill it out.
Okay.
I could possibly play guitar live and sing, but I'd really rather not. It's kind of difficult, and I just love to be able to run around on stage and flail around and go crazy, which you can't do so much with a guitar. But even so, we'll probably do what pretty much everybody else is doing and have backtracks for the extra guitar parts and vocal parts who can't feel live. But I'm looking to play as a 4-piece.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Sounds good, man. Well, dude, I do have one other kind of standard last question that I end with, but before we get to that, is there anything else that you want to add, either about where things are, or where they're going, or anything else you just want people to know?
Yeah, I'd say just go to poeticdescent.com for any info you need to know on the band. All the social media links are there, and the download and streaming links where you can check all our songs are on the website.
All right, cool, sweetness. Well, dude, you've been in Mayfly as a member. You now started a new project called Poetic Descent. You guys have played shows. You've recorded an album. You've got singles. You're doing a lot of really cool stuff. But Jared, as a human being, despite all this stuff, what is the most un-rock and roll thing about you? Good
question. Well, day job is doing construction. Today I'm actually just mowing yards all day, which doesn't feel very rock and roll to me. It's absolutely exhausting and hot out here.
Yeah, for sure. Now what would be really great is if the side note to that was, and not only that, when I'm mowing lawns, I'm listening to Britney Spears. But, that's okay. I mean, that's all right. If it's just the mowing lawns, that's fine.
About the most un-rock and roll band I listen to, which is my favorite band, DC Talk, and at least half the time they are rock and roll. So
hey, works for me, man. Works for me. And of course, they're bringing back the Jesus Freak Cruise next year, so there's that.
I have some somewhat negative feelings with that.
And
I have never got to see them live. I've never been able to see them live, and if that's the only way they're going to continue to play live, I probably never will get to. I'm not a rich man.
Dude, you and me both. I am so right there with you. As a matter of fact, if you're ever looking for just a short period of time and a good giggle, you should see my reaction video to their video announcement when that first got released, that they were doing it the first time. I was bumfuzzled, to say the least.
I did see a reaction video to that. I wonder if it was yours.
It might have been. I mean, there's a few of them laying around. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know, man. My favorite thing about it though was whenever Toby was on like a big national morning show talking about that being their big thing. It was like the day of the announcement, and while he was talking about how fun it was going to be and what a great way to be able to connect with fans and how it was so much better than going on a tour or any other possibility, like I'm just sitting there looking at their Facebook page, just like comment, just going ding 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 all the way down of just like, what are you guys doing? This is a terrible idea. And I just want to say, Toby, no, Toby, stop, Toby.
Yeah, I think they thought it was going to go off better than it did.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the whole thing sold out, but at the same time, I think that they garnered a lot of ill feelings as well as making some coin on that whole thing. But man, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I would necessarily do anything different if I was in all their shoes. But at the same time, I'm like, I would dearly love you guys to just do a stadium tour.
I understand why they did it. They've got their own bands, and they can't take off too much time away from that because they got people in the bands relying on them to make a living and stuff. So
right.
I see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
As hard as a fan.
For sure, man. For sure. But that's okay because we're both entitled to our opinions too, right?
Yeah.
Cool deal, man. Well, dude, I hope that today cools off a little for you. And I've been there. I've done the whole lawn game, and it's not necessarily fun. But hey, at least you'll stay in shape, and when it comes time to jump around on stage, you'll be ready for it, man.
Yep, great workout, definitely.
Cool.